Okay, so we'll do a validation of your unit. So CHCPAS001, prepare for the provision of pastoral and spiritual care. Is that right?
That's right.
Thanks for the work you've done on this. I've had a look at the documents, and they look like they're coming together really well. So we've got what documents have we got here?
So we've got the assessment plan and the assessment tool.
Yep.
And the assessment tool is the one main project, and then the accompanying instructions and mapping document and results record and things.
Yeah.
And then we've got the unit of competency.
Yeah.
And I've got a validation report to fill in.
Okay, so I'm going to take some notes on this, but would you like to also take your own notes so you can note down what you're going to do? Okay, so we've got today's date. You've filled in all this accurately. Excellent. So if we, let's agree on our code of conduct, which we've
used previously.
Yep. So we agree with that.
That's fine. Great.
Now, in terms of our checklist, does your tool clearly identify the units assessed by the code and title? Can you show me where's that?
Well, do you know, I realise I've made a mistake. I have, on the validation record, I've written prepare, but it should be plan.
That's a different unit, isn't it?
No, it's just called plan. I just miswrote. I wrote prepare, but it's plan for the provision of pastoral and spiritual care.
You're right.
But that is correct on the
actual assessment
tool document, which is good. So just on the validation report. But I think they're pretty clear.
You've got excellent. Okay, so you've got an assessment cover sheet. So in terms of the elements and performance criteria, can we flip to the back of your tool where we go through that?
Yeah. So it's obviously quite a long unit.
And there's lots of knowledge requirements that are regarding really technical codes of conduct.
So I'm not too worried about the. I'm pretty confident about the mapping actually.
Yeah.
So the knowledge requirements are extensive, but that's why we have the whole of part 1 of the project, which has,
that's
effectively
all the questions, right?
Yeah, it's a set of about 10 questions, some with some detail, and they aim to, within the kind of context of their work situation, make sure they have the knowledge that's required there.
Sure.
So, but tell me what you think.
Are there any of these performance criteria that you're concerned about in terms of particularly the questions in section 1 of the project? Do you think they cover off on allowing learners to demonstrate what they need to know?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm not really. The really difficult ones are these ones here: fundamentals of a range of world religions together with associated religious beliefs and practices, and cultural perspective on spirituality and major denominational doctrines, worship and practices. Like they're classic examples of dot points that are actually, that's a whole degree.
Yeah.
We teach subjects here on.
And what is this, AQF level 5?
And it's within the Cert 4.
Right.
So it's not they're not actually, they're very expansive knowledge requirements, but I take it that within the level at which this is being offered within the Cert 4 level, fundamentals needs to be taken pretty seriously. They just need to know some basics so that when a Muslim client comes in, they're going to know that it's important that, I guess, say that a man not offer pastoral care to a woman in that context, for example. I have tried to catch
and they might
them.
not know extensive information about different religions, but certainly have an awareness and hopefully the training has given them an ability to research more if they wanted to or needed to.
Yeah, definitely. And that's what I've tried to do with the resource portfolio. So basically
Where's that?
So you'll see in the mapping that those two criteria I've said have been met in the resource portfolio, which is part 3
Yeah.
of the project. And what I've done there is, as you know, you might have known, if you don't remember this, fair enough, the performance criteria require them to put together a resource portfolio.
Yes.
So that's that part of the assessment. And what I've done is mandate that 3 of the resources have to do with those areas of the knowledge evidence.
That's helping us not over-assess because it's covering off on both.
Well, I hope so. I think there's...
And it should be quite practical for the learners, this assessment.
I think it'll be useful to have a resource portfolio with these things in it. And I hope that somebody who's done the work to resource so that they know where to get information about, say, Buddhism, if a Buddhist client comes in.
Do you?
But I'm not... you might argue that it's not quite adequate on the knowledge evidence.
Do you define what resource means for the resource portfolio?
A good question. No, I don't. And that is a good idea.
That might be something that, because one learner might think I've got to go find an extensive textbook, and another one might think a 300-word blog is going to be fine.
That's a great idea.
It might be fine, but, you know.
Now, I'm going to write that down in relation to communication, which comes under...
So I do think if we, coming back to assessment, the validity point 2, I think this definitely does meet the elements and performance criteria. Okay. But in terms of, point 12, how we actually communicate with the learners, let's tighten that up a bit.
Yeah, no, that's a great idea. Yep.
I'll put
that down. That's really helpful.
Elements and performance criteria, I would say that's, foundation skills. Where are the foundation skills back there?
They're just, foundation skills for this unit are
explicit in the performance
criteria.
Sure,
so
okay, so that's fine.
Does.
And performance evidence. So you've got the resource portfolio, links with service providers. Yeah, that looks really reasonable. Okay, so that's good. Knowledge evidence. And this is quite the list, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you've passed off on the knowledge list partly through section 1 of your project and partly through section 3 primarily.
Yeah, and to be honest, one of the really important pieces of knowledge is processes for referrals, which is the last dot point there, and that's pretty well. I'm pleased that's pretty well addressed. You know, nobody's going to come out of this unclear about actually how you refer somebody. So,
which will actually be really practical for them.
I hope so. Yeah.
In an ongoing sense.
I hope so.
Because if we come back to what the guts of this unit is about, planning for the provision of pastoral care. So they've got to know all this stuff, but they're not supposed to be the one who does it all.
Yeah, that's right.
And this will allow a learner to grow in their awareness of when they actually need to refer.
Yeah, and obviously that's a lot of what the training's about, that when to refer.
And not seeing themselves as the one.
The saviour.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, well that's good. Conditions for assessment.
Very minimal conditions for assessment. I think the key thing is they've got to include a qualified chaplain or pastoral care spiritual worker as mentor or professional supervisor. And
what are the mechanisms that, have you got some ways of supporting them in seeking a suitable person?
Well, the entry requirement for this qualification is they have to have a work context in which they are doing work placement. And
does someone have to write a letter of recommendation?
Yep, and they have to already fit that requirement. So anybody who's doing this unit...
set them up already to be able to adhere to that successfully.
Yes, that's right. Anybody who's doing this unit, that should already apply. Yeah,
that's great.
In the
okay.
context in which
well, that ticks off on that.
And I think that also reflects the realistic workplace requirements, because they have to be doing this in that work context.
Yeah, they're not just reading about it and imagining that they would be able to do it. Yeah, I think this does look really realistic. Okay, so that's ticked off. Section 4, reflect realistic work conditions. Do you want to talk me through how it covers off on these different types of skills?
Yeah, I mean, not at great length. I think I think it does, mainly because the guts of this assessment tool is a workplace review. So they're actually kind of reviewing their particular context, and they're thinking about the policies and procedures in their workplace, and they're creating links with service providers to their workplace and getting resources that are relevant. So I think it's very much a kind of workplace related project. I think there are contingency management skills just in the fact that they have to establish these links. You know, and things go wrong, like they'll ring up, you know, so and so who was meant to be the referral, and then they won't work anymore, and they've got to find somebody else. So I'm pretty confident that in those areas it's effective.
Okay, well,
I'm just going to adjust this, make sure it's all okay. Oh, still on. Okay.
Great. Okay, so section 5, valid, sufficient, current, authentic. So, collection promotes the collection of evidence that is valid, sufficient, current, authentic. Did you have any comments to make about those? I'm just looking through your different documents.
So, currency and authenticity are problematic, partly because they've got to provide the kind of current contact details, and authenticity is established especially by the third-party report at the end of the assessment
tool. So did you say they are problematic?
No, they're not problematic.
They're not.
I'm pretty confident they'll be fine.
Yeah, I think the third-party report particularly helps.
And I think that the same goes for validity and sufficiency. I think I think the mapping document shows they're pretty good.
Yeah, I think so.
Match.
It seems to be pretty well covered. Pitched at the correct AQF level. Now, I thought this was 5. Is it 4 though?
Well, it doesn't have an AQF level attached to this.
Because it's being used in the certificate.
It's used in a Cert 4 rather than you've used this in a diploma level.
Yes.
But this will be in a Cert 4. So to be honest, it's much the same as your assessment. But
it's tricky though, isn't it? Because I think it is pitched at the right AQF level, but the knowledge evidence particularly mean that it certainly would be at the upper end of that. But
and this unit can be offered in a much higher qualification, so it's a tricky one. But
I think it's what you've done is fitting to both the AQF level and the requirements.
The reality is you can't teach this, you can't train this unit at you can't underdo it too much. You know, this is about as minimal as it can go, I think. So,
yeah, I think you're right. Okay, number 7, free of unnecessary assessment tasks. So you technically have one assessment task, but it's kind of 4 inside one. Do you want to talk me through why you didn't just do 4?
Well,
or 2 and 2?
I guess it's partly just my preference to give learners one substantial project that kind of links together. The way it goes together, it all kind of links together. So the knowledge questions then allow them to make more use of the links and then the conversation with the supervisor at the end. And I think it does work. I think if it was 4 tasks, we'd still do them in this order. But I think you could argue that maybe this will feel a bit
Have
big.
you had any feedback from previous learners around?
We have had some feedback about, we've had feedback either way, but some learners definitely don't like having too many. They lose track of them. So there has been...
And they can feel overwhelmed, even if it's the same amount of work.
Yeah. So I think maybe that's something to make a note to come back to, like to get feedback on.
For the next validation review.
We'll get feedback on this from the learners and see where they
Because
prefer it to
from
be
where
more
I
than
sit,
one.
it doesn't in any way look like it's got unnecessary assessment tasks. And I'm hoping that for the learners it'll be it'll show them how this stuff is coherent. Like if they're doing pastoral care skills and planning for it and creating resources and knowing about, like there's actually some.
But it could be that
some links there that this could help them see.
I think in particular it's worth considering taking the supervision section, making that a separate. I think we should get feedback on that. But anyway.
Okay, so flexibility.
I think it does work as it is. It just, it maybe could be better as two.
Okay, well that sounds good. So number 8, offer a range of flexible options. Is this covered off?
So there's a degree of flexibility in that. There are a range of work contexts people will be in. So some people, and the instructions say this, and in our conversations with people at the beginning, they can just make a link with their church and do some volunteer work in the church. Or some people are placed in a kind of hospital chaplaincy situation.
And they might have more of a formal role or an informal
role. Often the relationship we have a relationship with Canberra Hospital. We're getting kind of volunteer placements there. Do you know, I think there will be some people who, I think one thing we might need to build in is there will be some people who do this whose English is not especially good. And I wonder if the first part needs to be available as verbal questions. Section part 1. I wonder if that needs to be made available as an interview as well as written responses.
That could be good because in your assessment plan, I remember you said that the language, numeracy and literacy are mostly very good, but some of our learners, they might be really able to engage with this more easily. Verbally.
So I'm really thinking of actually just one person who's from a Sudanese background and who is in this kind of work, but who would find those questions. Well, he would still manage them. I mean, the reality is you can't be in, and that the unit makes it explicitly, you can't really be in this work unless you have...
he might be able to demonstrate his knowledge more clearly verbally.
Yeah.
Which would allow him to...
That's worth factoring in, actually.
And that would not be a difficult... flexible option to offer.
It's just reasonable adjustment at that point. We can't change the basic requirement of compiling a resource portfolio or establishing links, but we can change the way we ask those questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, number 9, include information about available support and guidance if needed.
I think there is very little to that effect, and I think that's because this has been offered within a context in which they're in contact with the trainer and assessor. Oh, they do actually. There is a thing saying consult your assessor if you have questions about this, but I think maybe I need to make that more explicit.
Can you add some page numbers to this?
Yeah,
well, please.
That would make.
I was about to ask you, which page are you on?
I'm on this page, assessment instrument, in the learner instructions. It's just page 2, basically.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I think.
Oh, yeah.
More. That's
consult
probably
your
not
assessor
adequate.
If you have questions about this. They might need a little bit more guidance around finding a suitable situation.
Well, I'm not too worried about that, but because they're already in a placement to do this unit. But I do think the reality is they're going to come up against something in this that doesn't make sense, and it'd be good if the instructions
explicitly
had the
said
details about get in touch with your trainer.
Yeah. Okay, reliability, number 10, formatted instruction in a logical and easy to follow way. Absolutely, add page numbers. I think it's really clear, well signposted.
Page numbers is a good idea, though.
Oh, and do you have version control on this?
No, not yet. That should be
That's
in
a
it.
different thing though, isn't it? Ah, yes, number 13. So
Yeah. But I'll make a note of that because that is important. Include in the
okay, and number
Final.
11, include information instructions marking guide for assessors.
I'm pretty sure they're. Well, you tell me what you think. I think they're fairly extensive. It is a long marking guide because it's quite a big project, so there's quite a few bits to it. But
It's good that you've specified inside the portfolio of resources the specific ones that the knowledge
I'm glad
criteria
you noticed.
actually stipulate, because we wouldn't want an assessor to skip that accidentally.
Yeah.
Because a learner could easily just include resources that they think are exciting over here, but actually forget those ones. That
Yep.
That's
I think
good.
we can hand on heart say we're covering it once we're doing
Well, you mentioned this is a bit long. I don't think so. I think it looks pretty streamlined, and it's got the most important things there for assessors to see. That looks great. Okay, so I'm ticking off on that. Number 13 we've covered off. Number 14. Okay.
Hang on, I think we just checked the learner instructions. We have talked about this already, but this is back here. So I've just said, well, you didn't skip it. We already talked about it. I want to include their information about support, and I also think this is where I've made a note of your point about having a definition of what are resources. What are resources? Do you think? What should I say?
Well, we want to remember
maybe just a list of possible resources.
You might want to have some examples, and recalling the AQF level it's pitched at. This doesn't have to be super technical academic stuff, but we still want it to be the kind of resources that will be useful and truthful and.
Yep.
Yeah.
I agree. While you look at the next bit, I'll just make sure the video is still working.
I'm just looking at the learner instructions. Is there a reason why you highlighted the third-party report in Part 4 under the requirements of satisfactory completion? Instead of simply saying all 4 parts of the project must be completed satisfactorily or something?
Yeah,
or is it
question.
just
I
because
just
it relies
highlighted
on
it because it's just an
else?
extra thing that somebody
You've got to
might.
get someone else to do it,
I
whereas
thought that was
everything
worth-
else is just the learner.
Yeah, do you think that's unnecessary?
No, it's okay. I think it's fine.
So,
Yeah, okay, well that
we have
looks...
point 14 then. We've talked about version control. So we've got, can I just work through these and you tell me if you think I've made a mistake? Name of assessor. Yes, that's there. Name of learner. Yes. Assessment date. Yes. Learner's written consent. That's yes.
That's the declaration.
The assessment results. I have an overall record of assessment results. Action plan in case of I think it's okay for that to be just our standard student information.
Yeah.
Same with the
and similarly with the next one.
Yeah.
The information they get upon enrolment.
And I think there is space for the assessor to note comments and feedback.
Where do they do that?
Oh, on each. Oh, hang on. Let's just check that. Because when I have trialed this, and when I've a version of it, there is an assessor comment section on the results record, and at the end of the marking guide.
Okay, so that's just one overall one. Would it be worth having space for comments in each section?
Maybe my plan was just to kind of use those sections just to refer people to parts of it. And
Sure.
when we've marked it previously, or things like this, we've put comments into the PDF.
Okay.
But
yeah, okay.
I don't
No,
want to.
that sounds good.
I kind of like having them in one place. But
And if it's one assessment,
yeah, but I mean,
you can refer back to the
that's
parts.
probably worth seeing if that works, because it's easy for us, but it'd be nice to know if the students actually like it that way.
Okay, and summary, feedback and recommendations. We've gone through a few different things you're going to alter.
Yeah, so how about I just, overall, I think it's in good shape. So see if you agree with this summary. Overall, it's in good shape. There are a few small changes needed and a few things to seek feedback on at the end of once we've done this. We need to make some provisions for reasonable adjustment and support a bit clearer. There's some small changes like including page numbers and version control, and there are some small changes to the wording of the assessment tool. So
but the substance of it, I think it really clearly covers off on the requirements for the unit.
Okay, well that's good. So I'll do all those changes, and
when are you rolling this out?
May 3rd is the first intensive related to this, so it needs to be done by at least probably 2 weeks before that.
Sure. Okay.
Does that sound okay?
Down. Yep, that sounds good. Well, I'm happy to sign off on that. I think that's really fantastic.
Thanks, Anna.
It should be a good unit for them.
We'll see.
Thanks. Great.
Great.
Okay.
See you next time.